Joining us today here at Nova Lab Studios in downtown LA is Kelly Graham. Kelly, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. I feel so special.
Of course, thanks for joining us. So go ahead, share with us your background leading up to what you're doing now.
My background, I suppose I started kind of in performing. Performing is where my first love is. So I moved out here doing modeling and acting and kind of shifted from there to being a multi-hyphenate creative, which is probably the most LA thing you can be. But right now my bread and butter is in writing. I'm a cannabis chef and a model. And then I also run my own business called Not Your Mom's Kitchen, which is like a multimedia platform for cannabis curious chefs. So I'm very busy. Yeah, I have a lot of jobs.
And you're originally from Ohio.
Yes, born in Ohio and then moved to Chicago when I was 18, stayed there for a number of years. And then I was like, either I'm moving to LA now or I'm never going to do it. So made the leap here.
When you went to you went to school in Chicago, were you studying something in the arts? Theater?
Okay. I studied theater and then I minored in arts management because I've always had like an entrepreneurial spirit. I've always been interested in that. And so there was a class called entrepreneurship, but in order to take it, you had to take a couple different classes beforehand. And I was
really?
like, well, I might as well take the minor
and
go ahead and just be an arts management minor. And I never did take that entrepreneurship class, funny enough, but
you're still doing it at least.
Yes, I'm still doing it.
Oh. Is there something you can pinpoint that you feel has brought that entrepreneurship in you?
I don't really know, to be honest.
It
was just like ever since I was a little kid, I can remember telling my mom like I wanted my own fashion boutique. I wanted my own bakery. I always just was thinking about owning something of my own. I don't know if that comes from maybe like I'm the baby in my family, so I spent a lot of time alone and entertaining myself. So I've always just been voraciously independent.
Especially when you're coming to entrepreneurship, that's a very, I would say, probably critical trait to have.
Yeah.
You know, even if you have partners with it, like you've got to be able to kind of think on your own, figure out what direction do we want to take this thing.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, somebody has to be driving the boat.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, exactly.
And I don't mind driving the boat.
Yeah, sweet. So now you've been here 4 years.
Almost, yes.
How was your, well, I guess going from Dayton to Chicago first, was that a kind of a big adjustment?
It was, but it was like a welcome adjustment. I did not like growing up in Ohio. You know, it has its pluses and its minuses for sure, but I'm a city girl for sure. And I always knew that I was going to get out as quickly as I could.
Right.
So 3 months after I graduated high school, I moved to Chicago. And yeah, it was a welcome change. It was definitely a culture shock at first, but I almost think moving to LA from Chicago was more of a culture shock than going from Ohio to Chicago.
Really? Okay, yeah. I'll ask you about that in a second. So like we were talking about before, I went to school in Ohio. And that's the sentiment you shared of like trying to get out is something that I ran across over there a few times, I would say. And I wouldn't say it's surprising because I liked when I was there. I enjoyed my time there. But I can see why, like if you're born and raised there, and there isn't, as compared to, I'm sure Chicago, haven't been there, but from what I've heard and compared to here, not as many things to do. So maybe that's what drives it too. It's like, I feel like I've already done everything. I've seen everything. It's much smaller. I think when I first got to Ohio, the Uber driver, whoever was telling me, you can go from the southernmost tip to the northernmost tip in like 4 hours.
Yeah, something like that.
But then over here, you do that, you're like not even to San Francisco yet.
Right,
so
exactly.
There's so much to see here compared to there. So I kind of wonder, do you think that feeling that you had of like, I want to kind of get out was kind of because like, I'm just kind of bored and tired of what's going on around me?
Boredom was definitely a part of it, but I always felt kind of outcasted because I was artistic, I was smart, I was outspoken. And it kind of made me go into my shell because, I was just kind of different than everybody else growing up. And so I figured it was better to just be like a wallflower than it would be to put myself out there like that. But I always knew I wanted to be out there like that.
So kind of growing up, you felt it was more, people were not necessarily introverted, but like maybe more, I don't know, like, was it like kind of conservative in nature? Like not as bubbly or whatever?
Exactly. People are very conservative and people want you to fit into a certain mold. And I never was a mold kind of a girl.
Right. I mean, that obviously has its benefits. You kind of see things in a different perspective.
Totally.
So there's a lot that comes from there. Okay. So now I just kind of wanted to see what your take on that was. So, so the reason I was going to ask you, how was it going from Chicago to LA? But I was like, well, no, probably the bigger shock was Dayton to Chicago.
Because I was ready for that. when I moved to LA, it was kind of a career choice. I wasn't really even sold on LA. I love Chicago. Chicago's like my second home. Whenever I go there, it just like makes my heart go pitter pat. I love Chicago. So it was really hard for me to leave. So moving here was definitely a career choice, and it wasn't so much because, oh, I love LA and I want to be on the beaches and I want to be in the sunshine. And now, of course, I love all of that. But it took a while to get used to LA. Like my first year here, I don't want to say I was miserable, but I definitely was like missing Chicago a lot.
What do you think it was though? Because in terms of like the city life, is it similar?
It's totally different.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the contrast? Because again, I've never been there, but just like, for example, looking at the number of people that live there or the number of like big companies based there, the number of things to do there, I felt there would be like a parallel in that aspect. But since you have both tastes in both, what would you say are like the biggest differences for you that you had to get adjusted to?
I would say, it's a different mentality in general. Like here, everybody is so chill. Everybody's laid back. And there are a lot of people that like to talk about their hustle and what they're doing, but they may not actually really be doing anything. And you learn pretty quickly, like people like to talk here. But Chicago, people like to do things. If they're talking about it, they're doing it. And there's definitely a different hustle mentality out there than there is here. And people, sign off at 3 p.m. on Friday here. And in Chicago, we're working all the time. And that's just kind of how I am, kind of like an East Coast mentality, New York mentality when it comes to that. But also, being that Chicago is so much closer too, like you can get from the north side to the south side in maybe like an hour and a half max on the train for, $2.25 or whatever it is now. But here, like we were talking about earlier, 40 minutes is barely going to get me to Santa Monica on a good day. So you have to really, it's a lot more of an effort to get to know people. It's a lot more of an effort to maintain relationships out here because you really have to build your own community, where in Chicago, it's kind of just built in. Everybody's there. Everybody's around at all times.
So have you kind of noticed here, kind of talking about the people, like you kind of mentioned, like how the hustling is there versus here and all that. Is there, do you kind of notice, because for me, like kind of being here, there's, you kind of notice like kind of fair weatherness in nature. You honestly, you see it like with the sports allegiances. You see it with the people in the relationships with people. It's kind of bizarre like that. Over there, like, I'm sure you've made plenty of friends there. And then so your time here, do you notice easier to make relationships there or here?
That's a good question, actually, because I feel like I've made more long-lasting connections in Chicago, but I noticed almost right away how giving people are here. I kept hearing before I moved here that I would get a lot of shallowness, and people are very much about themselves and moving themselves forward. But almost immediately, within like a day or two of me moving here, people were saying like, "Oh, let me give you my number so I can connect you with this person," or "You should meet this person." People just right away are very open and wanting to help you, which I was surprised by, but pleasantly so.
Frankly, I'm surprised too hearing that.
Yeah.
So when you came here, that first couple of days that you were saying you were kind of getting connected to people, what were you already trying to do at that point?
Oh, my Lanta. Well, this was kind of funny because I already had, like, part of the community that I have here in LA, I knew them in Chicago.
Okay.
So coming here, I already knew a handful of people, and the building I actually moved into, the reason I moved into it was because I knew somebody that lived on the floor above me. And so it was my very first night here. It was Halloween. And this friend of a friend took me to this party in the Hollywood Hills for some, I don't know if I can say any names, but it was, somebody who was in a popular band amongst the children. And it was a Halloween party. And I definitely got some vibes from people, who is this girl? I don't want to talk to her, whatever. But yeah, people at that party right away, I don't know, maybe it was the alcohol, I'm not sure, but people were very friendly. And I was like, oh, my Atlanta, this place is so much nicer than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, it was an adjustment nonetheless.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing that that's how your experience has been. And I mean, it's a good thing, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, it was a positive surprise. Because, I mean, again, I've grown up here, and it's a different kind of community. Because I'm more in like the suburbish area. It's not like the downtown LA kind of thing. We come here obviously for this, so it's a little different, probably the interactions there, plus there's more of like a communal feel, like amongst like Armenian people there too. There's like more heavily populated, so it's a different type of that aspect of stuff that we're kind of discussing there was a little bit different there. It's still, the remnants are there, but it's more like a I don't know, more personal in a way, just because it's like kind of it's closer, like in terms of your ethnicity and cultural and all that. So it's interesting hearing that, because I like talking to people that live in LA or have moved to LA but are outside of where I am, because LA's, again, like we mentioned, it's just so big.
Yeah.
Each like kind of section of where you are already is like almost like its own state in terms of like the feel, the mentality, what's going on around them.
Totally.
So I always like kind of picking people on that, and it's like, what's your experience like there with people? How's the interaction?
Yeah, so far it's been mostly positive. I mean, of course, you meet trash bags everywhere you go, but
that's not unique to any one place. Yeah. So so now that you've been here this long, how has been, for example, how's it been for you with modeling? Well, actually, let me backtrack. So when you came here, what was there one of those three things that you're currently doing? Was one of them the priority? Like, I want to get ahead in this one more so?
When I first moved here, I was full on the actor train. Like, I got an agent pretty quickly. I was taking the acting classes. I was going to auditions. I was doing the casting workshops. I was doing the whole deal. And that's kind of what transitioned me into doing, inadvertently into doing cannabis. And that was one of the big culture shocks too, because growing up in Ohio, weed was so illegal, and it was very illegal in Chicago too when I was living there. And now it's so funny, it's legal in both. But moving here, it was so odd just how open people are about weed. And that took a little bit of time for me to get adjusted to it. So I was getting kind of tired of the actor grind, because I felt like I wasn't an actor. I felt like I was a server. I was working in restaurants 5 days a week and busting my ass to run to auditions, and it just felt like I was wasting my time almost, begging for these jobs. My agent's going to kill me. Begging for jobs that I didn't necessarily, that I wasn't passionate about. You know what I mean? I was spending all this time and effort going to JCPenney commercial auditions where I don't even say anything. I'm just there. That's not performing to me. It wasn't fulfilling. So I was trying to think, what else can I do that might fulfill me? And I was working at a restaurant and making edibles for some of my coworkers as like Christmas gifts, because I've smoked weed since I was like 16. Sorry, mom and dad. And I've been baking for a super long time and cooking for a long time. It's always been a passion of mine. And then one of my coworkers came up and was like, I hear you make really good edibles. Can I buy some? And I was like, oh, I guess you can. And that's kind of like what started the ball rolling after that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I had spoken to someone else before. I don't remember if it was on the show, if it was off the show. And it's interesting how things like that kind of work out, where you're not thinking, oh, I'm gonna start a business around this, or I'm not gonna, like, you're like, I just do this for myself. And then like one person finds out, like a friend tries it, or like the person I think I was talking to was like making bracelets or something. They were making some kind of accessory thing, and then one of them saw them, like, that's so cool. Like, where'd you buy it from? She's like, oh, I make it. She's like, oh, can you like do one for me? And then it just kind of took off. So it's always interesting hearing that stuff where it's like, I'm not planning to, that wasn't part of the plan, was to do this thing. And then it happened. So given that it sounds like that's kind of how it was for you. So once you realize, oh, there seems to be people that want to enjoy it. Did you then have like a kind of a shift in mentality of, okay, let's kind of shift gears here?
Yeah. So acting kind of took a little bit of a backseat. It never stopped. I still have my agent who's sending me out all the time. But I was doing a little bit less of the work on my end and kind of letting him take control so that I could focus on my business, which at the time was an edible business called Cookie Jar that I started with my best friend, and just really hustling that. And we got investors pretty quickly, and we were very close to being in production as a licensed business. But the deal fell through at the last moment. It just wasn't working out between us. We weren't working well together. So put that to the side. And through that process, I kind of realized I wanted to be a little bit more ancillary in cannabis and not necessarily touch the flower itself, because you have a lot more legal freedom. And it took away a lot of the joy. Being in a licensed business took away a lot of the joy of baking with weed in the first place. Like, I love playing around, and I love messing with ingredients, and I love, making custom things for people. And you can't really do that when you're licensed. You can't do a lot of things when you're licensed. So I kind of made the shift to privatize my business, just dealing with private clients, and then writing now about cannabis too, and doing like recipe writing and stuff like that. And then my own baking show, Not Your Mom's Kitchen, which I produce. And then that is kind of its own beast as well, because it's a blog, it's a recipe hub, and then we'll eventually expand into more things as well. But, the show is the focus right now.
So how do you juggle all these things?
It's organization and just every day trying to keep your head on straight, to be honest. And I heard this one quote, I don't know if I'm going to say it right, but in business, you don't necessarily have to know 10 steps ahead. You just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And you can always Google, you can ask, you can figure out what the next step is, but you got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And oftentimes you can't think 10 steps ahead because it's going to change 2 steps ahead.
Absolutely. Plus, you get overwhelmed too.
Yeah, easily.
I think it's good to have a big picture idea, an idea of where I want this to go. But if you look at it like, I'm here now and I want to get there, it's a daunting task. Like that happens with me with this. Like I catch myself a couple of times where I'm like, oh my gosh, like to try and build this up. And it's like, well, I'll just enjoy the process.
Exactly.
Just enjoy each incremental step that you take, celebrate each milestone however you wish, take, whatever the achievement is, your first client, your 10th client, your 100th, whatever it is.
Exactly. And
then before you know it, you're already, that 10 step ahead, you're already at step 4. And you're like, wait, what the hell happened? I didn't even realize I went through the progression so quickly. And that way, again, you just enjoy the journey more. Mm-hmm. So are you doing most of this on your own? Or are you still working with your best friend on it?
It kind of depends. Like the writing is all myself. Obviously, he can't help me with that. So the writing is all me. The modeling is all me. But him and I actually met in Chicago on like an artistic basis. He was a photographer and I was a model, and we used to just like do our own shoots together. So we've always worked together. So he still works with me on Not Your Mom's Kitchen, the show, because now he is a video graphics designer. Shout out to Killian A. Because he helps me with that to make me look like I know what I'm doing sometimes. He makes me look very, very professional. So I appreciate him. So yeah, he still has his hands in the cookie jar, if you will.
That was the name of the business too, right?
Yeah, we nice. Started with Cookie Jar, the edible business, and now Cookie Jar. She's still out there, but Not Your Mom's Kitchen is the focus for sure.
Nice. So how long have you been doing the show now?
We released our first episode on 4/20, naturally.
Well done. Yeah. Do you have like a schedule on that? Like you want to do it every X amount of days or every X week, or you just kind of for now it's like just as it comes.
The intention was to do it every month. But then obviously with COVID, that derailed my shooting schedule. So we're kind of playing catch up, but I'm trying to just be loosey-goosey with it, because at this point I don't have investors. I don't have people that, I'm not wasting anybody's money to be taking 6 weeks between episodes. Mm-hmm. And then we're working on because right now my episodes, the first one's like 10 minutes because it just shows you how to infuse cannabis into any lipid, whether it's butter, whether it's oil, whether it's, you could even do it with milk, anything. So that one's 10 minutes, but then everything after that, I'm really showing you how to bake, and I'm trying to make it like a Martha Stewart kind of a vibe. So it's giving you like 17 minutes. So they're kind of long. So we're on the process of doing some little shorter, like bite-sized episodes that we can produce a lot quicker than these 20-minute long episodes.
But you're kind of taking them through all the steps in that, like I said, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that doesn't seem long to me, though.
Yeah.
But, I guess it kind of depends on the person, but I would think like, okay, if I'm someone that's seeking to learn how to bake something or prepare something, whatever it is, and it's whatever amount of time, it's like, okay, I need to make it. So like, what are I personally, like when I was living on my own trying to cook stuff, mm-hmm. I would prefer when they were as detailed as possible with every step. Like mm-hmm. there were times where certain measurements or whatever was like just kind of a dash or whatever. I'm like, a measurement, please.
Yes.
Give me like a quantitative measurement. So if I saw something that's like that amount, I would think, okay, this is probably going to be detailed.
And I have like my solid core group of people. Like we're getting about, the same amount of views per every episode. So I know I have like a core group of people that are actually interested in baking, and they're watching the full 17 minutes. But exactly, you have to be interested in actually baking this. Right. You're probably not just going to watch it for me. You're going to watch it because you actually want to bake some, whatever it is that I'm baking that day.
So how long have you been doing the baking with cannabis?
I probably made my first edible when I was like 24, so maybe like 6 years, yeah. And
was that just like I'm curious, let's see how this comes to be?
I'm thinking if my memory serves me correctly, I think the first edible I made was after I got my wisdom teeth pulled, because you can't smoke when you get your teeth pulled because you get like the dry socket or whatever.
Okay.
So I was like, well, I'm gonna want to get high. I'm gonna be in a lot of pain. So I made some brownies and then blend those up into a milkshake, and you get a weed milkshake.
So that was the first thing?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then I did cookies. I did some chocolate chip cookies, but oh my goodness. I mean, just looking back on it is so funny because they were so high dose, like way too much weed in them, way too much. And I fucked my friend up. Yeah.
So was it the first ones that you were doing, did they taste good?
Yeah. I'm
Well, you already at that point then you would have been baking for quite a long time.
Yeah,
right?
I've been baking since I was like a kid with my mom. And that's always been my stance on something. I always want it to taste good before anything else. So, of course, my first couple edibles were definitely a little more weedy than what mine might be now. It's a little more nuanced. So yeah, it's a learning process, but it's good to have those, first couple falls.
I mean, you were just mentioning like the infusing and this, like the infusing into like what does that even mean? What is that? So it's not just you can't just throw it in there, obviously. Then I'm guessing.
No, you have to activate the cannabinoids if you're going to be baking with THC.
Ah, okay.
And then you have to have it bind to the THC, which is a molecule. Obviously, that's for I guess anybody who doesn't know, THC is the psychoactive molecule in cannabis. So if you want to use it, you have to activate it. So you have to decarb it in the oven first, which means like basically you're going to toast your weed, and then you're going to I mean, there's a million different ways you can do it, but the most common way is then to cook it with whether it's anything that's high in fat, basically. So butter is an obvious choice and oil is an obvious choice. But yeah, THC is what we call lipophilic. It loves lipids and fat. So it will bind to anything with a high fat content.
So how'd you even like kind of learn how all that works? Was it that in time when you had your wisdom team removed, were you just like, well, let me look into how I'm supposed to make it work?
My best friend, the Killian, who was my business partner in all this, he actually was making edibles before me in New York. And I was like, oh, I'm kind of curious about that. Like, how did you do that? And then I Googled it. And at the time there wasn't this was maybe 5+ years ago. So there wasn't much information on the internet. There was maybe, 2 or 3 articles about this is how you do it. And so I kind of followed those articles. But, since then, now there's a wealth of information everywhere on the internet. So first it was reading like some article on probably High Times magazine and just getting what I could from that. And then a lot of it's a trial and error repeatedly because the information isn't out there. So you kind of have to learn it for yourself. And then later on, people get fancier and fancier. Like I'm sure you've heard of, or maybe you haven't, Bong Appetit was a big inspiration for me and was a big inspiration for a lot of people. It was this show on Vice. I don't know if it's Viceland. I'm not sure what the difference is. But it was basically like a cannabis cooking show, but they were doing it high end and they were doing like crazy infusions because they had a full lab and they would give you lab results. Like what happens if you cook your weed like this? What happens if we do it this way? What happens if we do it this way? So that was really fun watching that.
That's an interesting concept for a show, but also it's not surprising, So that, well, how much time before did you see that show before you kind of started doing yours?
I didn't see Bong Appetit until I want to say it was when I first moved here, like 4 years ago.
So then it's been over 4 years that was already ongoing. Interesting.
And then I wanted to have my own baking show without weed when I was living in Chicago. I wanted to have a show called Boss Bitch Baking. And then it never came to fruition, but it was always something on my head. And yeah, I guess the puzzle pieces just start to fall together. Like I kind of forgot about the show and then I realized I missed performing. And so then I was like, okay, maybe I will do this show now with weed. Cause I kind of like to think of myself as the love child of Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg. They have like their little show together. Yeah. They have their little kinship now. So they were kind of the inspiration, and Bong Appetit, was a huge inspiration for me. I'm not even gonna lie. They inspired me to do like my first full-on cannabis infused dinner with like multi-courses and, a little bit more adventurous dishes than you would typically think.
So you've had them now. So you have also put them in like just regular like entree type meals too.
Yeah. I do savory stuff and I do coursed out dinners and all that.
Is one easier to do? Anything. Is one easier to prepare than the other? Like, is it easier to bake them versus like in a cooking point?
I would say baking is I would say both of it is a science. Both are sciences and both require like a different skill set and a different mindset. Because THC also can only be heated to a certain temperature. So it limits you in what you can do. But I think it's kind of fun because you have to stretch your mind and think, okay, if I want to make this dish, how do I put weed in this? So it's kind of fun to stretch your brain like that. But I don't know that one is more difficult than the other. They're just different.
Do you prefer doing one over the other?
Baking, for sure. Yeah, because I have a sweet tooth. Bad. And baking makes more sense to me. Like I am very analytical.
And that one's much more measurement oriented, right?
Yeah. And you don't have to be as precise as people make it out to be. People make it out to be like, if you use 5 grams more flour than the recipe said, then you're screwed. It's going to be awful. That's not the case. I mean, for certain things, like for pastries that maybe require a lot of love and a lot of attention, of course. But if you're just making cookies, it's fine. You're gonna be okay.
Is it then baking soda like baking soda and powder? That one though, like if you fudge up one and the other,
if you mix those up, that's a
when it's
no-no.
over, right? Yeah. I knew there was one because I don't bake or cook. I tried cooking, I couldn't do that. Baking seems exponentially harder for me. So that's like one of the ones that I think when I was like kind of hearing like the contrast between the two, it was kind of what you mentioned. You're saying you're analytical. It's because that's much more precise, I guess, in the sense when it comes to the measuring.
Yeah.
Where it seems maybe with cooking, it's a little more loose and a little more creative, like to your discretion of how much of this do I like in it versus how much of that. Where if you're prepping like a pastry thing, it's like, well, you kind of need this much of that to make it rise or do this and that.
Yeah. But for me, baking is kind of like playtime because you do get to mess with like, okay, if I want a dense cake, let's see what happens if I use buttermilk versus like sour cream. What's that difference going to be like? So for me, it is kind of like a fun science experiment, and then I just get to eat cake afterwards. So
what would you say, if you can remember, like what's like the proudest thing you've made? Where you made it, like you made it, the process was like difficult, you ate it, you're like, oh, this tastes good too.
Well, I don't know that this one was the most difficult thing I've made, but it was, I think, one of the most delicious things I've ever made. It was one of the first cannabis dinners I've ever done. I made a horchata ice cream from scratch, which was a lot of fun. And then I used my snickerdoodle recipe for cookies. And my snickerdoodle recipe is like by far one of the most things I'm proud of because I modeled it after this cookie company back in Ohio. Maybe you know it, Cheryl & Co. They're everywhere. It's like a chain store. Yeah. Might not have made it to OU.
We had Insomniac.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know if that's in Ohio because I think they have that out here too.
They had it in Chicago too.
Yeah.
But Cheryl & Co., shout out to them. They have the best snickerdoodle cookie in the world.
Really?
Yes. And so I modeled, I went through so many iterations trying to like get this same cookie, and I want it to look the same too. I wanted it to be the same color, the same texture, everything. So I did those cookies with the horchata ice cream, and I made like cookie sandwiches out of them, and then I rolled them in cinnamon almonds, and then I had weed in it. So that one was really fun. But I've done like matcha bread pudding with honey whipped cream and bee pollen. Like I'll do fancy shit that too.
Yeah, this sounds pretty bougie.
So I'll do the fancy shit, but I'm always more drawn to like comfort food. I want everything to. The reason why I keep going back to not your mom's kitchen is because I want it to feel like your mom's kitchen, but with weed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I want it to give you that homey feeling. I want it to be comforting without, it's a little more fun in my kitchen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very fascinating concept because I saw, like, when I was on the website and I saw that, I'm like, this is, I don't dabble in the space, so I don't know much about, what other, like, types of, for example, shows like that there might be. But when I, going across your site and seeing what your concept is, I'm like, this is actually pretty interesting because that's the exact impression that I got. It's like we're cooking. Mm-hmm. Like maybe something you're like, oh yeah, my mom cooks, my mom bakes, but it's like, but there's also weed in it. Yeah. So maybe your mom doesn't do that. So then
exactly.
It's not your mom.
It's not quite your mom's kitchen. Yeah. But the beautiful thing too about my show that most people, I don't think I'm ever necessarily going to grab an audience that doesn't smoke weed or doesn't enjoy weed, but all of my recipes can be made without weed. All you do is just take the weed out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they're still really good. So that's the beautiful thing too. Like you can still take my recipes and make some chocolate chip cookies and just have them be chocolate chip cookies. You don't have to put weed in it.
Yeah.
I'm not pushing it on anybody.
So something I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on. So when I left Ohio in 17 or 18, 2017 or 18, I think it was 2018. And I don't remember if at that time it was legal in any capacity. Mm-hmm. I think now it's recreationally, or is it completely legal?
I think it's medically legal.
Medically.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because I know I know initially in the beginning, I don't think it was legal at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So now, okay, so they've moved it a
It
step
was like
up there.
staunchly opposed.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised to see it go medically legal because, as you know, Ohio is kind of a swing state, and it very is much that mentality. Like it is 50% conservative and 50% like progressive.
Yeah.
So I was kind of surprised to see that.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of locals felt that way, even if they were, whether they were on either side, whether they were for marijuana legalizing or against it. I'm sure once they became legal, they're like, oh crap, like, oh man, it became legal. And someone like, hell yeah, it became legal.
But I think one of the pros of legalization is too, you get a lot of those conservatives who maybe were so against it. Now they're like, okay, maybe I'll try to learn about this, because I know a lot of people, not my parents, but many parents out there were, opposed to cannabis. And now they're starting to open up their minds to maybe the idea of CBD.
That's usually the entry point, it seems.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's like with the stigma, I think,
people don't want to get high.
Yeah, it's like, because it's like, again, it's like another form of intoxication, right? So like if you're, for example, you're not really big on drinking, like you're kind of have a stigma against drinking, like, oh no, someone gets wasted and they're behaving like this or like that. You kind of have the same one then probably for like drugs in general, where it's like, well, it's again just an altered state of mind, right? So I think that's what the stigma is more behind, like you're not you, maybe in their eyes. So I think that's where with the CBD, the entry point there is because like, well, nothing changes with you. It's just if you're in some kind of pain, for example, you have arthritic pain or whatever, it provides you relief for whatever period of time without you getting that high. So at that point, I feel like what's
the harm?
Yeah, that honestly. And also like what's the argument at this point? Is the concerns, if the concern was the intoxication part, well, that's not there. And then what's left? Is it just a stigma that it's still coming from the plant? So what is it?
I think it's still just the stigma of like the war on drugs that has instilled in so many people that, reefer madness and all the negatives that go along with it. Like, my parents they are not cannabis people. They don't actually know I work in cannabis. So they'll find out when I can like buy them a house with weed.
That's funny. I mean, look, I don't do it. So it's not my thing, but again, I don't care. People, I mean, you're especially living here, like you're not going to live here and not know people that do it.
Right.
It's like whether you want to or not, it's like you're someone does it. Whether you knowingly, whether you know they do it or you don't know, there's someone there that does it.
Yeah.
So it's like you may as well kind of get on board in the sense that just be aware that it's there anyway. You can't, and it's already here. You can't do anything about it. But the thing that I don't get is like, okay, so I've been around people when they've been in that state of mind. And it's like, you can kind of tell when someone's drunk, for example, versus when someone's high, right?
Yeah.
I typically prefer being around someone that's high because usually they're not like, I don't feel as obligated to make sure that person's going to be okay.
Well, totally.
Versus where someone's drunk, there's been people where I'm like, make sure someone's eyes on them because they might just do something crazy.
Well, with weed too, like it is a medicine and many people do treat it that way. Like many people take it the same way they do their antidepressants. So yes, you can get intoxicated, but I feel like you have to know your limits and you have to be a responsible person.
Right.
Like, despite my image, I probably smoke a lot less than people think, but I'm just here to try to spread the good word because it's helped me exponentially and I've seen it help other people exponentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think like many things, if you overdo it, then then that's when you kind of run across the whole stereotype of, oh, this guy's just a pothead, a bum, always on the couch, not doing anything. It's like, yeah, you can definitely get there. I don't see why you, like, it seems very obvious how you can get there. You just keep doing it. And you'll probably get to a point where like, I don't want to do anything. But then if you kind of use it in a way, I guess, to like enhance working, for example, I don't know, stuff like that. If you're still being productive, you're not harming anyone. And it's legal where you are. It's like, what's your thing behind it? Yeah.
I saw some quote by Wiz Khalifa. I will not be able to quote it correctly, but he was like, if you can't be productive and smoke weed all day, that's your problem. Like, if you're a bum, you're going to be a bum. Weed isn't going to change that, in my opinion. Like, because I've always been a hustler and weed hasn't stopped that. I've never like had an unproductive day because, well, I also know my limits. Like, I can,
which is critical. That's
because I can for sure have an unproductive day if I, smoke 2 blunts to the face, but I'm not going to do that if I have stuff to do that day.
I guess so my part of bringing that up was, do you feel that it's still kind of, the stigma behind it is still kind of a great amount. It's definitely gone down. I'm sure you'll agree too.
Yeah.
Especially, again, like we said, it's legal now to an extent in Ohio. But do you feel there's still enough of a stigma where it's still kind of like there's still ways to go?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's just a ways to go, not only in the stigma, but in the same way as every industry, there needs to be more diversity and inclusion. And the biggest, in my opinion, hole in the cannabis industry is the fact that there are so many people in prison, specifically Black and brown people that are in prison for what we now are making millions, possibly billions of dollars on. So there's a lot of reworking we have to do. And a lot of that does come down to stigma.
I think, what's one of the crazy things, like they're categorizing in the same way they categorize like heroin.
Yeah.
Which one
doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Like, I mean, look at how many people from Ohio, right? Like that area, look at how many people die from like opioids,
Meth,
for example, right?
Yeah.
Things that should be categorized like that. I feel if you lump marijuana with things like that, it seems like you're almost like diminishing the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like the severity of them. Because if you look at someone when they're high on marijuana and then look at someone they're high on heroin,
right, or
meth, you tell me which one seems like the actual, like if they should be categorized the same way,
right?
And then from what I think I've read or I've heard is when you have them, since marijuana is scheduled Schedule 1, there's not as much research I think that can be done on it as a result.
Yep. So it's a whole loophole.
Yeah. So, I mean, if there's research, I've heard that there's research showing the benefits. I've heard some research suggesting it's inconclusive, some saying whatever. It's like, okay, so you have a bunch of different points, right? Mm-hmm. How about I don't know how it would work, but if you bring it down to whatever level where you can do more research on it, then you can actually see, okay, can we definitively prove it scientifically that it's beneficial in this aspect, like enough. Yeah. There's already some that suggests it is. How about we have something where we can have enough backing of it, where you can take it off of that list, make it legal in whatever way, whether it means you can buy only X amount. I don't even know how any of it works.
Yeah.
But whatever, put the limitations in whatever capacity you need. That's has the breaking point or whatever. I don't know. And then see how it helps, because you hear about the veterans that use it, right, for pain and PTSD, schizophrenics. Some other illnesses too, where
I mean, it has an array of uses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like if it's where people, like the jokes and like in shows and stuff, right? When someone's like trying to get a rec card, it was always like, make sure you go and say you have, you need pain management or something, you're anxious, whatever. But for the people that actually do use it because they're anxious, because they need to manage their pain, if it's benefiting like that, then maybe we can find a way to
there is a bill going into the House. It was supposed to go last week, actually. It was supposed to be the first bill introduced that's talking about federal legalization of cannabis for the United States. But of course, they're pushing it back now to after the November 3rd election. And it's doubtful that this particular bill will get passed, but it's still a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm curious. I would think at some point it happens federally.
It's going to, because they see how much money we're making. They want a slice of the pie.
That's something we haven't even discussed.
Yeah, they want a slice of the pie. It's a multi-billion-dollar business.
I think it was Colorado when it became fully legal there. The first few months of it being legal, was it the first half a year or the first year?
The numbers were crazy.
The amount of tax money that they made, that Colorado made.
Taxes here can be as high as 40%. That's ridiculous.
As much as I love anything, if I go and I see a tax on that thing's 40%, I'm going to say, see ya.
I'm lucky enough that I work in the industry, so I get a lot of stuff for free.
Right.
But that's one of the benefits of having your medical card. A lot of people still go with their medical card because taxes are more like 13 to 20%.
Oh, so there's a difference if it's...
Yeah, if you're recreational. Like because I think it's partly to prevent, maybe not prevent, but to discourage people from doing weed tourism. And to also get a piece of that money of weed tourism.
What's that? What is weed tourism?
Like people coming from illegal states coming to a legal state.
And then buying and then taking it back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, and I think it just is supposed to not make it as appealing to people.
Okay.
Because now you're going to be paying if an eighth of weed is $60, now you're paying almost $100. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not paying $60 for an eighth. No, I'm not doing that. Sorry.
Well,
guys.
that's the other thing too. Is like what I've heard is like it's not really an expensive drug. It's honestly it's the tax probably more than anything that makes it like oh,
I mean,
damn,
it's
man.
so cheap, and that's part of the thing too that I want to educate people with my show. People are often intimidated about making your own edibles because the idea is like, oh my gosh, it just seems so expensive. And actually, it's very inexpensive, like compared to if you buy a $30 bag of some shitty cookies, when you can make $30 is going to make you a ton of cookies at home. And then you made them at home and they're fresh and they're ooey gooey out of the oven. You know what I mean? So yeah, weed is cheap.
Do you have like, so for example, like let's take like chocolate chips when you make those. Do you have like a certain chip or a certain whatever, like do you have certain things that you like I always use this one?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to like chocolate, I like chocolate chunks. I don't really like chocolate chips. I think chips look like manufactured. I like that, kind of rustic, comforting.
Also, there's more of it.
Yeah, exactly. You know
especially when it melts.
You're catching on. So I like to get like the organic dark chocolate, but I can vary from brand to brand, but like 70-ish% cacao. That's what I want.
I just can't get on the board with dark chocolate. It's too bold of a taste for me.
I used to hate it too, but now I love it. Milk chocolate now is like too sweet for me. I can't do it.
Yeah, it's definitely is sweet.
Yeah.
So if milk chocolate, then you probably don't even mess with white chocolate.
I will
That's
occasionally
super sweet,
because white chocolate has like a particular flavor profile, but white chocolate is kind of like I try to stay away from it because a lot of people see it as like a faux pas, like a no-no.
Why?
Because I think to do white chocolate, it's kind of like a chemical process.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's kind of like butterscotch. Like there isn't really. I personally love butterscotch. One of our original cookie jar flavors was a butterscotch oatmeal cookie. But I feel pretty strongly about doing everything like as organically and naturally as possible because that just makes sense.
Right.
Why would I put more chemicals into my body?
Right.
But I could not find for the life of me any natural butterscotch. I was gonna have to make it myself, and I was like, that's just gonna make the prices skyrocket to the roof. It's not gonna make any sense.
What's butterscotch's taste? Which probably sounds like a dumb question. I've literally never eaten it. I don't think I've ever tried it. It tastes like
butterscotch.
Well, Snickerdoodle's the cinnamon one, right? It has like a cinnamony taste.
Yeah. Snickerdoodle. Everyone says it's like a cinnamon sugar cookie, but I hate when people say that because it's not the case. It's like a spicy delight. It's like its own little thing, Butterscotch. One of my girlfriends says that it tastes like it's like a caramely, milk chocolatey, like it's creamy, but it's caramely and it has a little bit of bite.
Interesting.
Old people love it.
Really?
Yes. I don't know why. Like the 80 and up, they love butterscotch.
I seriously haven't tried it.
Have you ever had one of those like Werther's Originals?
What's Originals?
Werther's Originals. That's an old person.
Brand?
Yeah, that's an old person candy too. That's kind of like what butterscotch is like.
No. Do they have that here?
Yeah. They definitely do. Go to CVS and it'll be in the candy aisle where there's Originals.
You know what's the other one that always like associate with old people? It's Junior Mints.
Love a good Junior Mint.
What's the Whoppers?
I like those too. Yeah, anything with sugar in it, I'm like, how's my name on it?
Because when I would work at the movie theater, like the two candies.
Those are movie theater candies.
Yeah, the two like least sold ones, at least by us. That seemed the least sold to me, at least. It was always Junior Mint and Whoppers.
That's what I used to get.
Not Whoppers, Milk Duds.
Oh yeah, Milk Duds are tough.
They're literally tall. They are strong.
Yes,
like it's hard to chew them.
Yes, I like the flavor, but my cavities, they're not built like that.
Oh, so you do have cavities?
Oh, for sure. Like my whole mouth is cavities. At this point, damn, my dentist is making a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. It's gonna be to be a baker, just in any type of baker.
Yeah,
and then your teeth are probably like.
I've had to rein it in. It's been tough.
Well, you said you got your wisdom teeth removed.
Yes.
All of them?
Yes.
How's that?
It was fine. Yeah, I've had a lot of.
The brownie helped. The shake helped.
Yes, my wisdom teeth was actually like smooth as can be. Everybody said it was going to be awful, but I was like up and eating a bagel the next day. Like it was fine.
Did you even feel like the loopiness or anything? Because my roommate did that, and then they warned me. They're like, make sure someone picks him up. Like he's not supposed to drive, so I picked him up. He seemed fine. Like he slept on the drive, and then by the time he like woke up from his like nap, he was like already like functioning normally. I guess it's probably person to person.
Yeah, I wish I said some wild shit, but I didn't.
Well, have you ever seen like any of those videos of people like looped out? I went because when I was picking him up, it was somewhere in Lancaster, I think. And then like because again, like coming from here, like that dentist office looked funny because it was just like separated by like a thin like curtain rail. So like I'm walking through and I see there's this one guy like super red in the face. He's like wearing this trucker hat and his eyes are like bulging and he's just like cracking up. Like he's all having the time of his life because of the up. And I was like trying so hard not to laugh. It was hilarious. And then like my own roommate too, like he was like completely looped out initially too. And then like I remember he was like walking out, he was like trying to like thank the doctor or whatever, but he was like so like out of his like hand was like this. He couldn't even like make it. I was like, dude, let's get in the car.
That's so funny. Yeah. I've been under anesthesia 4 times and I've never been loopy like that.
One time I wasn't like fully looped. It's weird because I could feel like I was in between. I was like I was conscious, but I was also like this can go in. Like after I got out of the anesthesia, it was like going both ways. I was like, okay, I can feel some control in what I'm saying. Yeah. But I'm also like, I feel like I want to go to sleep. And just like the words are just gonna come out. But like I still kind of remember what I was saying, but it just like made no sense. Like I was like talking about like Phil Jackson, the Lakers, like completely unrelated to anything that was going on.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, after my my wisdom teeth, I was cool, and then I had my ACL replaced in the first. Yeah.
What'd you do? Hiking?
Biking in Chicago. Oof. Yeah, I got into 2 accidents that resulted into 3 surgeries, which again is, part of the reason why weed is a part of my life because it has helped me with pain management and all of that good stuff. But yeah, I tore my ACL, my first accident, and then I broke what's called the neck of your femur. So it's like your hip joint. It's a little tiny bone that like connects your femur to your hip.
Okay, I think it was in your femur itself. That's a
huge... I mean, no, this was even worse.
Oh, really?
I had to go into emergency surgery, and they told me I had an 80% chance of losing my hip.
Holy crap! Really?
Yeah.
Dang, this was from the bike accident?
Yeah.
What happened? Did you like hit something, bumped?
The first time I was hit. The second time, it was like a freak accident. My tire got stuck in a rut in the road.
Oh my goodness.
And I got flung off, and I landed right on my hip and just like snapped it clean off.
Oh my god! So you just like went to the ER or something, right?
No, I was crazy. If you've never broken a bone or like had something crazy like that happen to you, you really do go into shock and like you don't feel anything. So I knew something wasn't right based off of like the way I reacted. I screamed pretty loud, which when you have like a vocal reaction like that, that means something's wrong. And then my leg went numb, which is usually your body being like, hey, please don't move this. Please sit still. But I was actually on my way to closing night of a award-winning show in Chicago at the time. And so I was like, no, I have to perform tonight. And so I somehow got to the theater.
Oh, you were performing?
Yes, I was supposed to perform that night. And it was closing night. It was our last performance. And so I somehow get to the theater and my whole cast saw how much pain I was in. And they were like, Kelly, are you fucking crazy? We're calling you an ambulance right now. And I was like, guys, are you sure? Like, how are we going to do the show? And they were like, you need to go to the hospital. Like, what are you doing here? So then, once I had like their support and their well, not really even like their blessing. It was more so their like insistence. Yeah. They were like, you need to go. They called me an ambulance and I went to the hospital.
Oh man, that's bonkers.
Yeah. And then I went into surgery at like 1 a.m.
What was the recovery like on that? How long did that take you?
Oh my God, miserable. I was on crutches for 4 months.
Do you still feel any effects from it?
Not
fully
now.
Healed up?
Yeah. I had a second surgery on my hip because they had to put me together with a bunch of pins. So after I was fully healed and the doctor was satisfied, I told him like I could feel the pins because when you hear the word pin, you think like, oh, a cute, slim little, piece of metal. No, these were like some fucking Home Depot screws they put into my leg. And so I could feel them just like even touching my leg. And this sounds really gross, but I could like feel the muscles like moving over top of them.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was not good. So I had to wait a full year to make sure the bone was strong enough. And then they took the screws out. And then I had another 2 months on crutches. And then you're doing physical therapy like 3 times a day.
Oh, wow. 3 times a day?
Because they give you stuff that you can do at home.
Uh-huh.
And then I only physically went to physical therapy like once a week.
Oh, okay.
But then or at the time, no, I was doing it 3 times a week because I had gone like past my insurance deductible or whatever. So everything for the rest of the year was free.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's
so I was like, fuck it. I'm going
to
to go to physical therapy as much as I can. And weed was very helpful throughout that time.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
And I was doing a scripted podcast at the time, which was really fun because I got to perform and like do this whole thing where wear some headphones and sit in front of a microphone on crutches.
So how'd that work? So you essentially like you kind of have like, this is what I'm going to talk about. Like, is it actually like written outline?
No, yeah,
or?
It was kind of like a radio like sitcom.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was really fun.
So you enjoyed that experience?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
How long did you do that for?
Oh my goodness, maybe like a year. It was a solid amount of time.
It's a good amount of time.
Yeah, it was honestly a blessing because being, it's kind of funny when we first went into quarantine for COVID. At first, I was like, I was already kind of in quarantine when I had my first hip surgery because, I'm on crutches. I can't really do a whole lot. I'm in pain. So I was stuck in the house for like 4 months pretty much,
right.
With the occasional get out the house. But having that like scripted podcast as a kind of like performance release and not actually have to be able to physically perform was, so healthy for me.
So it seems pretty clear then, like media, performing, all of that has been like part of you always.
Yeah, I'm always somehow dipping my toes into like the artistic world.
I forgot who I was talking. This may have been against someone else on the show, but people that specifically like with the arts. It's obviously boomer, but I don't. Maybe you can stop me where you disagree. To me, it seems like it's boom or bust.
Yeah,
and by that I mean you either unfortunately don't make it for one reason or another. Maybe you're just you aren't good enough, or you're good, but it's just there's so many people, it's hard to make it in. And then the boom is, I don't even mean necessarily like you become like Brad Pitt and you're striking gold millions. Like you're just doing well enough where like it's your living. Like you're fine.
Yeah.
So anything where it's like that, but again, specifically with the arts where you have to, like, for example, why'd you come to LA? Like you said, well, the acting was here, those type of opportunities, right? So anything that requires you to leave where you're from, whether it's family, friends, comfort of maybe some other job, to go elsewhere to chase like what your true pursuit is of what you want to do. I always have like immense respect for that because, again, it's like like you mentioned, you're working however many days a week, right? Serving to make sure, and then going from there to your auditions to make sure you can make it there, to pay for all this stuff, whatever. It's it's like a daunting idea to me. Like things like, oh my gosh, like people take that gamble on themselves to do that. So I guess for you, was it just more like the conviction of, no, I can do this, and this is what I'm so passionate about? Is that what essentially cemented you? Like you're like, nope, I'm gonna go to LA and then I'll make it work.
Yeah, I would say so. Like performing is my first love, and it saved my life in a lot of ways, which might sound cheesy, but I was like a depressed kid growing up in Ohio, and I always, for whatever reason, I just had this gut feeling that I wanted to be an actor and a model for whatever godforsaken reason. I truly to this day don't know why. And that's why I believe in like following your gut, because I always had a feeling, even though I had zero experience in doing any of that. And once I actually started auditioning, and my first play that I auditioned for, I didn't even make it, but like that's what sparked the moment. Like I fell in love with just that feeling. It like gave me a voice and like gave me an emotional vocabulary, which was huge for me. And performing just is my passion, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, so going from Ohio to Chicago to here, chasing what you're doing, chasing to essentially get to where you're at now, and then anything beyond. What's been the most difficult part of this whole process for you?
I almost think like your inner saboteur and the constant like, are you good enough? And convincing yourself that you do deserve your dream life. Like, and just constantly instilling in yourself that confidence and that manifestation of like, you can have your dream life and there is only one you. And just keeping that self-confidence going, really, because it's easy to get down, especially when you hear a bunch of no's and when you see people around you doing well and succeeding. And for whatever reason, sometimes, you know the right people and it comes easily to certain people. And it's never been easy for me. I've always had to like work my ass off. So it's that consistency. Not letting your self-doubt and your inner saboteur get to you.
What's helped you get over that inner voice of you that's kind of questioned you, or just hearing the no's and stuff? Is there like a person, or you just kind of were able to overcome on your own?
I feel like, yeah, it's been a lot of myself. And I also, too, my best friend, Killian, I know I've mentioned him a million times, but like he really is my rock. And so we've supported each other out of some really dark times and encouraged each other. So I think it's also having a good support system, but it is also being mentally strong and building up a tough skin and realizing that a lot of times these no's don't have anything to do with you. There's a million things going on behind the scenes that have nothing to do with you. And always, as cheesy as it may sound, like mantras, meditation, all of that, anything you can do to hype yourself up, hype yourself up the same way you hype your friends up. You show yourself some love. I'm big on self-love and taking care of yourself because you only get, one you. Mm-hmm. So it's all about just keeping yourself mentally strong. And if you have to talk to yourself in the mirror and be like, you're the best, you got this, then that's what you got to do.
Whatever works.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for coming and sharing all this with us. Where can people find you?
They can find me at notyourmomskitchen.com. They can find me on Instagram at Miss Kelly Jean. They can find me on Instagram for Not Your Mom's Kitchen. It's Not Your Mom's Kitchen, but it's not YR Mom's Kitchen, Not Your Mom's Kitchen.
Perfect. We'll spell it all out. We'll put it in the description. Well, thank you again for coming. It was very cool talking with you and kind of hearing all that. Very educational for me because, like I said, I have no idea about any of this stuff.
Well, thank you for letting me blabber on. I appreciate you.
Of course. Thanks for coming.